Xu Nian is a very kind girl, but unfortunately, she suffers from severe trauma that left her unable to speak after witnessing her mother die right in front of her. She is constantly haunted by horrific nightmares. On her way home, Xu Nian runs into her stepmother, Wanli, who tells her that her father is in a financial crisis and has decided to sell her mother's school. Xu Nian responds by saying the school isn't her father's property to sell, but Wanli insists that he's already made up his mind. Xu Nian goes with Wanli to meet her father, but instead, Wanli drives her deep into the forest, where a group of men appears and drugs her. Xu Nian wakes up in a hotel room, while Wanli hands the room key to one of the investors she wants to make deals with. Essentially, she is handing Xu Nian over to this man. The man enters the room, but Xu Nian has hidden inside the wardrobe. She manages to escape, but his men chase after her. She begs a hotel worker for help, and he quickly takes her to another room. Gu Ming is a billionaire and a successful businessman, but his enemies are constantly plotting to bring him down. One of them arranges to catch Gu Ming in a compromising position with a girl. Xu Nian bursts into the room and finds Gu Ming under the influence of stimulants that the worker had slipped him, thinking Xu Nian was the girl meant to carry out this scheme. Xu Nian quickly writes on her phone that she's being chased and needs help, but Gu Ming, in his drugged state, tells her to leave. Terrified of leaving the room, Xu Nian hesitates, and Gu Ming, struggling to control himself, approaches her and tries to initiate something. The cameras record them, but Xu Nian manages to push Gu Ming away, who then passes out, and she escapes. The next day, Gu Ming arrives at his company to take over as the new chairman following his father's death, a major event covered by the media. Gu Ming meets with the board members, including his uncle, Gu Hong, who objects to Gu Ming taking over the company. However, Gu Ming calmly tells him to save his objections for the next meeting when the board will vote. Furious, Gu Hong decides to use the video he captured of Gu Ming with the girl the previous night to destroy him. Meanwhile, Xu Nian returns home and tells her father about what his wife did, revealing that Wanli intended to hand her over to an investor. Wanli denies everything, and of course, her father believes her. Xu Nian, overwhelmed with anger, lashes out and strikes Wanli. Her father, shocked, tells her to leave. Wanli bursts into tears, claiming that Xu Nian is falsely accusing her. Her father asks Wanli for the truth, and Wanli lies, saying that the man is interested in her and wants to marry her, and in return, he will invest in their company. Her father seems convinced by this explanation. Xu Nian then re-enters, pleading with her father not to sell her mother's school, at least. He replies that they are in a crisis and need to sell something that doesn't mean much to him. Xu Nian protests, accusing him of following the advice of his disgraceful wife. Enraged, her father slaps her and throws her out of the house completely this time. Minutes later, Wanli's daughter, Yu Yu, comes in, showing them a video that's gone viral. It's of Xu Nian with the billionaire Gu Ming. Gu Hong confronts Gu Ming, warning him that this scandal will cause significant losses for the company. Gu Ming quickly asks what scandal he's talking about, stating that he was simply with his fiancée in their private room. He adds that he intends to find the person behind this and sue them. Gu Hong is taken aback, asking what fiancé he's referring to. Gu Ming calmly replies that he's talking about Xu Nian but hadn't wanted to reveal her identity to the public just yet. It is revealed that Gu Ming had already gathered complete information about Xu Nian and had instructed his assistant to bring her to him. At the same time, Wanli arrives with her men at Xu Nian's house and kidnaps her once again, planning to hand her over to the same men. However, Gu Ming, on his way to the address he tracked down, spots them putting Xu Nian into the car. Xu Nian manages to fight off the men and escape yet again. Running, she sees Gu Ming in front of her, who steps in to help, knocking out the men. Recognizing Xu Nian's fear, Gu Ming reassures her by saying he's the guy she hit the other night. Relieved, Xu Nian begins to trust him. Gu Ming then asks her to come with him because he has something important to discuss. Xu Nian agrees and goes with him. Gu Ming introduces himself and explains that his reputation has been damaged by the video, and he asks her to fake an engagement with him to save both their reputations. Xu Nian declines the idea at first, but Gu Ming insists, telling her to think of it as a business contract. Standing by the window, Gu Ming waits for her response, but just as he turns, Xu Nian receives a message and quickly slips away. When Gu Ming turns back around and finds her gone, he is stunned by her boldness. Xu Nian rushes to the school, where she finds parents protesting the decision to sell it, fearing the negative impact on their children. Xu Nian reassures them, saying that she is a teacher at the school and the daughter of its owner, promising to handle the situation. One of the women agrees to trust her, but warns that the issue must be resolved as soon as possible. Xu Nian steps out, deep in thought, trying to figure out how to resolve the situation. Eventually, she arrives at Gu Ming's home. Apologizing for leaving so abruptly the previous day, she explains what happened and asks Gu Ming to buy the land rights to her mother's school, so her father can't sell it. In return, she agrees to sign the engagement contract he proposed. He agrees to buy the rights, but only for the duration of the contract, after which he will relinquish them. Xunyan agrees to these terms. After signing the contract, Guming lays out the conditions, how she should behave in his presence and in his absence, and he shares details about his family. He also mentions that he has prepared a room for her in his house, but under one condition: she is not allowed to enter his private room. Xunyan settles into Guming's home, and soon, Guming begins introducing her to his grandfather and the rest of the family. Before meeting with his grandfather in his office, Guming warns Xunyan to be careful with her actions and avoid making any mistakes. In the office, Guming's grandfather scolds him for getting engaged to the daughter of his enemy, revealing that there have been long-standing issues between their companies. Guming explains that Xunyan's father's companies are in a weak position and that by announcing his engagement to Xunyan, he could gain control of all the businesses. Impressed by his grandson's strategic thinking, the grandfather agrees but adds a condition: Guming must break off the engagement with Xunyan after securing control of her father's companies. Guming agrees to the plan. Guhong stops Guming, questioning how he could possibly get engaged to the daughter of their enemy, reminding him that Xunyan's mother was once their father's mistress. Guming warns Guhong not to meddle in his father's affairs, but Guhong retorts by reminding Guming that he's not even their father's real son, just the son of his wife, so he shouldn't care about the family's reputation. Guming coldly replies that while he may not be their father's biological son, he's still the legitimate heir to all the family's assets. Meanwhile, Guhong's wife and daughter are gossiping about Xunyan, calling her a gold digger who's easily ensnared Guming, assuming she can't hear them because she doesn't speak. But Xunyan calmly tells them that while she can't speak due to trauma, she can hear everything. She adds that she's not offended by their words because it only proves she's smart and beautiful enough to catch a billionaire like Guming. She even goes further, confidently telling them that Guming is in love with her and has admitted that she's the first woman he's ever fallen for. At that moment, Guming enters the room and sits beside Xunyan, teasing her by saying he's deducted 5 points from her for causing these rumors. In a flashback, it's revealed that Guming has set up a system for Xunyan to earn 100 points in order to be allowed to return to her teaching job. Later, Guming takes Xunyan out to dinner, and eager to do something that would earn her more points, she unknowingly places a piece of her fish onto Guming's plate, not realizing he has a severe allergy to fish. Embarrassed in front of his uncle, Guming deducts 10 points from her score. Meanwhile, Wanli and Yu are visibly anxious about Xunyan and Guming's engagement. Wanli confesses her fear that once Xunyan gains power, she'll take revenge on both her and her daughter. Together, they devise a plan to break up Xunyan and Guming. Yu suggests seducing Guming to make him leave Xunyan, but Wanli refuses to risk her daughter's safety. Instead, they opt for an alternative plan, ruining Xunyan's reputation, forcing the family to separate Guming from her. Yu goes to Guming, claiming that Xunyan is a loose woman who has had many relationships with different men for money. Guming dismisses her accusations and leaves to announce his engagement to Xunyan at a press conference. However, just before he can make the announcement, photos of Xunyan with other men are leaked to the press. The reporters immediately bombard Guming with questions, asking how he could be engaged to a woman with such a scandalous past. Xunyan tries to explain the situation, but no one gives her a chance to communicate through sign language. Frustrated, Guming decides to take her away from the press, and they leave together. In the car, Xunyan tells Guming that she's innocent and that the photos are fake. Guming reassures her that he believes her and will help clear her name. Soon after, Guming's assistant arrives and suggests that this is the perfect opportunity for Guming to end the engagement, claiming he didn't know about her past. But Guming refuses, saying he can't abandon her like that because it would further damage her reputation. Xunyan, overhearing their conversation, tells Guming that she agrees to end the engagement and doesn't want any help from him. Guming, however, insists that he made her a promise and intends to keep it, urging her not to be so sensitive. He then orders his assistant to contact the tech department to prove that the photos are fake. Meanwhile, Wanli and Yu are gossiping maliciously about Xunyan, with Wanli saying that she knew from the moment she married Xunyan's father that his daughter was trouble. Back at the press conference, Guming arrives just in time to present evidence that the photos were doctored. He tells the journalists that he plans to sue those responsible for the false rumors that harmed his fiancée's reputation, which only fuels Wanli and Yu's jealousy and anger. Afterward, Guming returns to Xunyan, informing her that the issue has been resolved. Grateful, Xunyan thanks him profusely for his help. However, Guming, in his usual stern manner, tells her he doesn't want her gratitude and, since she caused this problem in the first place, he's deducting 50 points from her total. Disheartened, Xunyan feels the weight of the deduction, as she's still longing to return to teaching at the school. On her way out, Xunyan overhears a conversation between a cleaning lady and Wanli. The worker is threatening Wanli, demanding money or else she'll expose her secrets. Xunyan immediately seeks out Guming's assistant, asking him to help her get in touch with the head of the cleaning staff. Xunyan asks the head of the workers about the cleaning lady, and he tells her that she's a part-time worker named Jilin. This name triggers a memory for Xunyan. Her old nanny was also named Jilin, and she was the woman who always administered her mother's medication. Xunyan begins to wonder about the connection between Wanli and Jilin, especially since her father had fired Jilin right after her mother's death. Determined to uncover the truth, Xunyan decides to confront her father. When she arrives at her father's house to speak with him, he refuses to listen and walks away. Yu Yu seizes the opportunity to insult Xunyan and tries to kick her out of the house. But Xunyan firmly reminds Yu Yu that she owns the house, while Yu Yu doesn't own anything in it. Xunyan steps outside to talk to her father, her plan being to reconcile with him in order to uncover the truth about Jilin. After several attempts, she finally wins back her father's favor, and they even go fishing together, just as they used to when she was a child. Wanli and Yu Yu watch this scene from the window, consumed with jealousy and anger, fearful that Xunyan might rekindle her relationship with her father. That evening, Xunyan decides to stay for dinner and casually asks her father about her mother's diaries. He tells her they are kept in the basement, which immediately makes Wanli uneasy. Xunyan heads for the basement, but Wanli rushes ahead to retrieve the diaries before she can. As Xunyan enters the room, she confronts Wanli, accusing her of killing her mother. Wanli sneers, mocking Xunyan, saying that her mother was already in a terrible state and didn't need anyone to kill her. Xunyan presses further, asking what Wanli's connection is to the nanny, Jilin. Wanli dismisses her, saying Xunyan must be crazy, grasping for anything to absolve her mother, the cheater, of her shameful actions. However, Wanli soon realizes that Xunyan has been recording their conversation, and she becomes cautious, realizing she can't let anything incriminating slip. Xunyan decides to spend the night at her father's house. When Guming finds out, he insists on joining her. This forces Xunyan to introduce Guming to her father, but her father refuses to speak to Guming and leaves them both awkwardly standing there. Xunyan questions Guming about why he came to her father's house, knowing full well that everyone there disapproves of their relationship. Guming explains that he was concerned she might get hurt, but when Xunyan asks if he was worried about her, he quickly clarifies that he just didn't want any more problems or scandals like the last time. Guming, trying to assert control, claims the bed and tells Xunyan to sleep on the floor. Feeling mischievous, Xunyan decides to get back at him by playing eerie sounds and telling him that the house has been haunted since her childhood. Guming, visibly shaken, eventually gives in and joins her on the floor. Xunyan, sensing his fear, tells him that when she was scared as a child, her mother used to sing a specific song to comfort her. She then plays the song, but it turns out to be just as eerie, further unsettling Guming. Defeated, Guming admits that she's won and reluctantly offers her the bed. The next morning, Guming approaches Xunyan's father with a proposition to buy his entire company. Xunyan's father is outraged, accusing Xunyan of returning only to facilitate the sale. Xunyan, who had no knowledge of Guming's intentions, confronts Guming, furious that he made such a move without consulting her. She chases after her father, swearing that she had no idea about the deal and pledging to support him in whatever decision he makes because all she wants is his best interest. Her father, softened by her sincerity, agrees to sell only a portion of the company as a collaboration between the two businesses. When her father presents this modified proposal to Guming, Guming accepts. However, just as Xunyan's father is about to sign the contract, Wanli tries to intervene, warning him not to trust Guming or Xunyan. Her husband firmly tells her that he's free to manage his own property and signs the deal. Later, Guming and Xunyan return to their home. Without notifying Guming, Xunyan leaves the house. Guming, feeling uneasy and irritated by her secrecy, decides to follow her. He watches from a distance as she meets with a mysterious man. Suspicious, Guming discreetly takes photos of the encounter and instructs his assistant to gather information on the man. Xunyan had secretly been investigating the mysterious death of her mother, but she hadn't told Guming about her quest. One evening, she went to meet with a man she thought could give her answers about her mother's death. Unfortunately, the man turned out to be a predator who attempted to assault her. Just as things were taking a turn for the worse, Guming arrived in time, saving Xunyan by beating the man and carrying her home. As Guming tended to Xunyan's injuries, he revealed that he had figured out she was conducting an investigation. He asked her why she hadn't told him, but Xunyan remained silent, still lacking the critical piece of the puzzle in her investigation. The next day, as a way of thanking Guming for helping her, Xunyan prepared his favorite meal. Guming, waking up to the smell of the food, looked at Xunyan with new eyes, starting to realize that he might be developing feelings for her. A little later, his assistant called to inform him that the man Xunyan had met was actually a private investigator whom she had hired to look into her mother's death. However, the investigator had refused to help her any further because she couldn't pay him. Guming instructed his assistant to give the investigator as much money as he needed to continue helping Xunyan with the case. The following day marked the celebration of Xunyan's father officially transferring his shares to Guming. At the event, Xunyan found herself near her stepmother Wanli, who, along with her friends, began badmouthing Xunyan, accusing her of being ungrateful to Wanli for raising her after her mother's death. Xunyan, maintaining her composure, publicly apologized to Wanli, seemingly accepting their accusations. But in a surprising twist, Xunyan accidentally spilled her drink on Wanli and then handed her a spare dress, suggesting she change into it. When Wanli went to change, she found the dress to be revealing and hesitated. Xunyan, smirking, questioned why Wanli was suddenly shy about wearing such a dress, reminding her that she used to wear outfits like this at the nightclub she worked at before. Xunyan then calmly revealed that she had uncovered the truth, that Wanli was involved with Xunyan's father while her mother was still alive. In fact, Wanli had given birth to Yu, who was actually Xunyan's father's illegitimate child, not the daughter of Wanli's previous husband as she had claimed. Xunyan continued, explaining that when her mother found out about the affair, it broke her heart and ultimately led to her death. Taking advantage of the situation, Wanli manipulated her father into marrying her to avoid the scandal, all while spreading rumors that Xunyan's mother had been unfaithful. Wanli retorted that the truth was that Xunyan's father had willingly cheated on her mother, and he even married Wanli knowing her true nature. In a fit of rage, Wanli struck Xunyan, insisting that if her mother had been alive, she would have managed to steal Xunyan's father away regardless. Unbeknownst to Wanli, their confrontation had been filmed and was now being broadcasted in front of the press. As Wanli attempted to leave while feigning innocence and lunged at Xunyan, Guming intervened, stopping her before she could reach her. Wanli tried to convince her husband that Xunyan was selfish for exposing them without considering the consequences. In a heated exchange, Xunyan's father shouted at Wanli, accusing her of already tarnishing the family's reputation. Guming, however, defended Xunyan, stating that his wife was the root of the problem, and it was Wanli who had unlawfully taken from Xunyan's mother's estate. In a fit of frustration, Xunyan's father stormed out, desperate to salvage the family's name. Meanwhile, in an attempt to retaliate, Yu lunged at Xunyan with a knife, but Guming intervened, saving Xunyan just in time. However, he fainted upon seeing the blood, a revelation that shocked everyone. Xunyan quickly brought Guming home and called for a doctor. After examining Guming, the doctor informed her that he suffered from hemophobia, a fear of blood, which explained his reaction. Soon after, Xunyan's father arrived, urging her to convince Guming not to press charges against Yu for the assault. Xunyan snapped back, frustrated that her father seemed more concerned about Yu's well-being than the trauma their family had caused her and her mother. Her father insisted on keeping things under control, worried that the scandal would escalate further. In a shocking revelation, he mentioned that Xunyan's mother had also been unfaithful, having an affair with Guming's father. This revelation infuriated Xunyan, and she lost her temper, declaring that she would ensure Guming dropped the case if her father agreed to divorce Wanli and name Xunyan the rightful heir to all his properties. Her father, realizing the depth of the situation and wanting to protect Yu, reluctantly agreed to her terms to save his daughter from any further harm. Guming returned to his wife, who was in tears, pleading that she didn't want a divorce. Xunyan's father informed them that they would separate temporarily, after which he would take Wanli and Yu back. When Xunyan went to retrieve the divorce documents, Wanli feigned tears, telling Xunyan that her father needed help and that she was taking care of him. She insisted that Xunyan shouldn't abandon Yu, as she was, after all, her sister. Xunyan defended herself, stating that Wanli was the reason for her mother's death. Her father interjected, claiming that her mother died from guilt due to her infidelity. Just then, Guming's assistant entered with Jilin, the nanny. Xunyan realized that it was Guming who had managed to bring her back. She inquired about her mother, and Jilin revealed that Xunyan's mother had suffered from depression after being cheated on by her husband. Wanli had been giving her money to swap her antidepressants for other medications that drove her to madness. Wanli lost her composure, vehemently denying Jilin's accusations, but Jilin provided evidence, explaining that Wanli had frequently threatened Xunyan's mother over the phone. On one occasion, she had urged her to disappear from their lives. Given her unstable mental state, Xunyan's mother had tragically complied with Wanli's demands. In a fit of rage, Xunyan's father struck Wanli and left the house, leaving Xunyan in shock, struggling to comprehend what had truly happened to her mother. She went to the place where her mother had died, and when Guming learned of this, he rushed to her side, finding her drinking on the rooftop. He pulled her back inside and stayed by her side throughout the night. The next morning, Xunyan woke up to Guming telling her that she had been rambling throughout the night. Confused, she asked how this happened, only to be astonished to find that she could speak again. Guming explained that she had talked while intoxicated, and Xunyan joyfully screamed that she had regained her ability to talk. Later, Guming took Xunyan to his grandfather's birthday party, where everyone was surprised to see her speaking again. However, Guming's grandfather informed him that they had purchased shares in Xunyan's father's companies, which meant Guming had to separate from her. Guming expressed to his grandfather that he didn't feel this was the right time for marriage, but the grandfather insisted that Guming's friend's daughter was returning from abroad soon, and he needed to marry her. During the cake cutting, the grandfather asked Shunyan to eat, but she explained that she had allergies to butter and dairy. This revelation surprised both Guhong and the grandfather. The grandfather then asked his assistant to conduct a DNA test between Shunyan and Guming's father since Guming's father had suffered from the same allergy. Meanwhile, Guming returned Shunyan's land ownership rights, informing her that their plan was nearing its conclusion. He explained that just as he had helped her expose Wanli, he needed her to first prove to his grandfather that his uncle was responsible for filming them at the hotel to tarnish the family's reputation. Shunyan agreed to assist them. At the same time, the grandfather's assistant arrived with the news that Shunyan was indeed his granddaughter. Overjoyed, the grandfather went to find Guming and Shunyan. He inquired about when Guming planned to separate from her, but Guming confessed that their engagement had initially been a facade to protect the family's reputation. However, he had begun to develop genuine feelings for Shunyan and did not want to end things. The grandfather happily supported this marriage, expressing his delight that Shunyan was his true granddaughter and not the daughter of his enemy. That evening, Shunyan reflected on Guming's words, feeling deeply affected and wondering if he truly loved her or if he was merely saying this in front of his grandfather. Meanwhile, the grandfather met with Guming and insisted that he must marry Shunyan within the next month. Guming was taken aback by the grandfather's sudden change of heart and noted that he was aware of their psychological state. In a flashback, Guming recalled fainting when Shunyan got too close to him because he struggled to be near girls. The grandfather reassured him that treatment would be straightforward. Guming began therapy sessions with a doctor. When Shunyan entered, the doctor spoke with her privately, explaining that Guming was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and was unable to touch women. He asked her for help, and Shunyan agreed, recalling how much Guming had helped her in the past. Shunyan started trying to get closer to Guming, touching him more often. She even accompanied him to work, holding his hand the entire time, while he felt increasingly uncomfortable with the situation. In the second phase, Shunyan informed Guming that the doctor had suggested watching horror movies together to help him acclimate to the sight of blood. She shared her own experience of having suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, explaining how confronting Wanli had helped her regain her ability to speak, and encouraged Guming to face his fears as well. Convinced by her words, they settled down to watch TV, but when the power suddenly went out, both were terrified. In their panic, they rushed downstairs, and Shunyan accidentally bumped into Guming, leading to an unexpected kiss. Flustered, Shunyan ran to her room and remained inside for the entire day. Guming sensed her embarrassment and decided to go to work without her, though he felt unhappy being apart from her. He called to reassure her that everything was fine, prompting Shunyan to venture out for groceries. However, Wanli was watching and ended up kidnapping Shunyan. While Guming was out shopping for an engagement ring, he received a message from Wanli, informing him that she had Shunyan and that he needed to come quickly, or she would die. Guming rushed to the location, pleading with Wanli to release Shunyan, promising to give her whatever she wanted. But Wanli revealed that she had brought Guming there to witness the death of his beloved. Just as Wanli pushed Shunyan, Guming intervened, saving her just in time as the police arrived, having been alerted by Guming about Wanli. After apprehending Wanli, Guming confessed his love for Shunyan, declaring that he couldn't live without her, and presented her with the engagement ring. Shunyan accepted, and they began preparing for their wedding. However, Guhong paid a visit to Shunyan, shocking her by claiming that she and Guming were siblings. He handed her a DNA test result and expressed his disbelief that their father would approve of the marriage, knowing the truth. Shunyan couldn't wrap her head around this revelation, but Guhong showed her pictures of their parents together, explaining that Guming's father had loved Shunyan's mother, but their families had forced them to separate. Eventually, her mother married Shunyan's father, but later, Guming's father returned and resumed his relationship with her mother. Guhong insisted that Shunyan cancel the wedding immediately. In search of answers, Shunyan confronted her father about whether she was his true daughter. He coldly replied that she wasn't. Meanwhile, Guhong met with Guming, informing him of his conversation with Shunyan and that she needed to end the engagement. Guming retorted that he knew he wasn't his brother's son, but rather the son of his wife. Unfazed, Guhong declared he was tired of the family's wealth being tied to someone not born into it. He offered Guming an ultimatum: relinquish his claim to the family assets and leave China, or he would expose the evidence of their ongoing relationship. During this time, Shunyan's father revealed to her that he had once loved her mother, but had reluctantly married her due to family pressures. When Shunyan discovered she was pregnant, her father decided to pretend that she was his daughter. However, after he betrayed her mother with Wanli, Shunyan's mother sought revenge by being unfaithful to him with Guming's father. Heartbroken, Shunyan visited her mother's grave, lamenting that her mother had tried to protect her all along, but it turned out she didn't deserve it. She cried, confessing that she had fallen in love with her brother, unaware that he was not truly her brother. As she prepared to leave, Guming stopped her, embracing her and assuring her that they were not siblings. He explained that he was the son of his father's wife, not his biological son. Xunyan believed him, but insisted they needed to escape and leave everything behind. Guming told her that his grandfather had devised a plan to rid them of the evil uncle, and urged her to trust him. He revealed that he would announce to his uncle that they were siblings, and she needed to return to her father's house as part of the plan. Deciding to trust him, Xunyan went back home. Overwhelmed by sadness, Xunyan fainted, but the school principal found her and took her to her house. The woman gave her her mother's diaries, which revealed that her mother had indeed met Guming's father, but only to inform him about his daughter, not to betray her husband. She had refused to be seen as an unfaithful woman. However, someone had taken pictures of them together and published them, framing her as a cheater. Xunyan was relieved to learn of her mother's innocence. The next day, she attended a press conference held by Guming, wearing her wedding dress. She announced that she was pregnant and would marry Guming. Guhong intervened, claiming she was Guming's sister, but their grandfather interjected, clarifying that Guming was the son of his son's wife and, after both had passed, he decided to adopt him and entrusted him with managing the company because he believed in him. Following the meeting, Guhong told his father that he wouldn't give up his rights to run the companies. Xunyan apologized to her grandfather for disrupting the plan, but he was pleased that she would be living with him from now on. During a company meeting, Guhong announced that Guming was unqualified to manage the company because he wasn't a family heir. Guming replied that he did not intend to be the manager, and their grandfather declared that Xunyan would take over. Xunyan revealed that she had learned from her mother's diaries that Guhong was the one who spread the rumors about her infidelity. Their grandfather stated that someone as unscrupulous as Guhong could never manage the company. As a result, Guhong was expelled from the company, and Guming took over the management, while Xunyan assumed control of her mother's school. The drama concluded with Guming proposing to Xunyan once again, solidifying their bond amidst the chaos.